Exmoor is a unique landscape of moorland, farmland, woodland and valleys shaped by hundreds of years by the people and nature of this area. When Samuel Taylor Coleridge was living at Netherstowey from 1797 to 1799, he set out on almost daily walks over the Quantocks and Exmoor with his close friends William and Dorothy Wordsworth, who were living nearby in Alfoxden. They trekked over moors and down combes, composing poetry, which resulted in the collection of lyrical ballads, the book which marked the start of the English literary romanticism. For poets like Coleridge, Wordsworth, Byron and Shelley, this was untamed countryside and led people to value nature and natural beauty. On their longer walks, towns and villages like Watchet and Dunster provided accommodation for Coleridge and the Wordsworths, allowing them the time and freedom to compose their verses. In the autumn of 1797, Coleridge was in low spirits. He was feeling unwell and he was penniless, for he received little money from his writing. So in October of that year, he set off for Porlock Weir, which was the home of his maternal ancestors and a place he knew well. He took a day or two off to find the isolation he needed to finish his poem Osorio. A tranquil nook these days, Porlock Weir has played its part in the life of eastern Exmoor over the centuries. For the sea route was once by far the easiest way to travel up and down the coast here. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the exports were corn, flour, bark for tanning, bricks and oysters to Bristol. Leaving Porlock Weir, Coleridge set off up through the woods to walk to Culbone. When Coleridge was walking through the woods, he found abundant whortleberries beneath the trees, and there was the sound of the waves breaking from the shore, which filled him with delight. This worthy coombe thatched toll house wouldn't have been here in Coleridge's time because it was built after the 1860s, but we're going under the arch now as the path takes us through there and up to Culbone. In 1866, Lord Lovelace built an Italianate-style mansion house near here, and Ada Lovelace, who was the only legitimate child of Lord Byron, had a series of tunnels constructed, allegedly by Swiss mountaineers, called fairy tunnels. The house has since been demolished. After walking along quite a difficult path, zigzagging up and down through the trees, this is the first glimpse that Coleridge would have had of little Culbone Church. Culbone was considered one of Somerset's holy places and was already frequented by seekers of the romantic. And the little parish church is the smallest complete parish church in England, dedicated to St Wino, a 6th century Welsh saint. A tiny slit in the north wall is known as the leper's window, because some people believe that local lepers, excluded from contact with other people, managed to get a view of the altar here. Because during the 13th to the 18th century there were colonies of lepers living in these remote woods, making their living from cutting timbers and tan bark and producing charcoal. And it is said that at one time lepers outnumbered the local deer population. But this is a wonderfully peaceful spot. The church is recorded in the Domesday Book of 1086 and is almost certainly pre-Norman. It is just 35 feet long, with the nave taking up 21 feet of that length. The body of the church is at least 11th century, if not older. The porch is probably 13th century, and the nave was rebuilt in the 15th century. And inside are box pews, including a 17th century pew for the squires of nearby Ashley Combe House. There's a very simple font that is almost certainly Saxon, and a small window in the south wall of the chancel of a similar date. The window frame is carved from a single block of solid sandstone. This is the Culbone standing stone, a medieval stone about 3 feet in height, which was discovered lying down in 1940, right here. So it's been placed up right now, and it's between the boundary of Oare and Porlock. And it has the incised cross at the top of it, which probably dates it between the 7th and the 9th century, in a rather interesting and old woodland. We're looking down to Ash Farm, which is traditionally reputed to have been where Coleridge stayed, a quarter of a mile from Culbone Church. It is at the head of a wooded coombe of the same name and on the track to the church. The autumn landscape of Culbone inspired him to finish Osorio, and although the play was set in Spain, a passage clearly describes Culbone. The hanging woods that, touched by autumn, seemed as they were blossoming hues of fire and gold, the hanging woods most lovely in decay. The many clouds, the sea, the rock, the sands, lay in the silent moonshine, and the owl, strange, very strange, the scritch owl only waked, sole voice, sole eye of all that world of beauty. During Coleridge's stay at Culbone, he also started on a poem, Kubla Khan. He had taken 3 grains of opium to relieve what he called at different times a dysentery or a slight indisposition, and in the resulting trance composed 200 or 300 lines of poetry without any sensation of consciousness or effort. Coleridge stated he wrote the poem at Brimstone Farm, though no such farm has ever existed. It is likely that this encounter took place while he was staying at either Broom Street Farm or Ash Farm near Culbone, and it is also possible that he composed the poem at the Culbone Parsonage near to Ash Farm. We know from Dorothy Wordsworth's journals that on the evening of November the 13th, 1797, she and Wordsworth and Coleridge set off on a whim to walk from Nether Stowey to Exmoor. After leaving Nether Stowey, the trio made their way to Watchet, over the Quantocks and down into Watchet through Govier's Lane. Now, when we came by car, it took us more or less half an hour. We don't know how long it took the 3 of them to go up the hills and down the dales to Watchet. When they made their way down to the harbour, all would be dark, apart from a few flickering lights from the thatched cottages on their way, and nothing would be heard apart from the sound of the boats rocking in the harbour. They made their way to the Bell Inn, where they were going to stay the night. During their stay in the inn in Watchet, Coleridge may well have found himself in conversation with a retired sailor there, and though he had the basis for the Rime of the Ancient Mariner in mind, which he was going to write with Wordsworth for the lyrical ballads, these conversations could well have added to what he was going to say. And also, when they saw what was happening in the harbour, or the activity there, that would have again added to his rhyme, which was to become one of the best known in the English language, the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The ship was cheered, the harbour cleared, merrily did we drop, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. At length did cross an albatross, thorough the fog it came, and an it were a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name. God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why look'st thou so? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nae any drop to drink. Ah, well a day, what evil looks had I from old and young. Instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. The 7-foot-high effigy of the mariner was designed and created by the sculptor Alan B. Herriot from Scotland, and it was unveiled in 2003. After spending the night at the Bell Inn in Watchet, the Wordsworths and Coleridge set off again to walk from Watchet to Lynmouth, and there they spent the night, and then they came to the Valley of the Rocks, and this place so inspired Wordsworth and Coleridge that they decided to write an epic poem together about the wanderings of Cain, who killed his brother Abel, set in this very valley. Coleridge turned the writing of the poem into a competition to see who could write the most words the quickest, but that wasn't the way Wordsworth worked. He couldn't do that, and so the project was abandoned. The Valley of the Rocks is one of the most dramatic sites on Exmoor. The valley, which unusually runs parallel to the sea, is now dry. It is thought that it originally held one or both of the two Lynn rivers, but that coastal erosion altered the course to its current position, entering the sea at Lynmouth. Freeze-thaw action during the Ice Age is responsible for creating the weird and jagged sandstone tors that rise craggily above the valley, and for the large amounts of scree on the hill slopes. Coleridge wrote this to a young friend while here. Mount not wearisome and bare and steep, but a green mountain variously up-piled, where over the jutting rocks soft mosses creep, or coloured lichens with slow oozing weep, where cypress and the darker yew start wild, and mid the summer torrent gentle dash, dance brightened the red clusters of the ash. Other poets have been inspired by the area. Robert Southey wrote, "The ship was still as she could be," from the Inchcape Rock. Wordsworth, "We lay beneath a spreading oak," and Shelley, "I am the daughter of earth and water," from the cloud. Coleridge wrote most of his influential poetry while living at Nether Stowey, not writing at home, but out in the countryside of the Quantocks and Exmoor. Over the broad, though shallow, rapid stream, the alder, a vast hollow trunk, unribbed within, all mossy green with mosses manifold, and ferns still waving in the river breeze, sent out, like fingers, 7 projecting trunks, the shortest twice 6 of a tall man's strides, one curving upward, and in its middle growth rose straight with grove of twigs a pollard tree. The rest, more brookward, gradual in descent, one on the brook and one befoamed its waters. One ran along the bank with elk-like head and pomp of antlers, but still that one that lay upon or just above the brook and straight across it, more than halfway o'er, ends in a broad head and a white thorn thicket of twigs. And here another tree, as if the winds and waves had worked by art, that it, with similar head and similar thicket, bridging the stream complete, through these 2 thickets the shepherd lads had cut and planed a path. Oh, sweet in summer, and in winter storms I have crossed the same unharmed. Coleridge left Somerset in 1799 for the Lake District and then London, but the abiding image we have of him is tramping over the hills and valleys of this area with his friends the Wordsworths.